What's up, everybody? Welcome to Chatting with Chapman. I'm your host, Andre Chapman Jr. They also call me Dre Made It Happen because I always make things happen. And
Yes,
I
sir.
have the pleasure of sitting here with the winner of the 2021 Club 7 National Rugby Championship with the Chicago Lions in Seattle. He then moved to Chula Vista to live and train at the Olympic Center and join USA's Men's 7 rugby team. In 2022, he made the HSBC World Rugby 7 Series in Malaga, Spain. Then, that same year, he was named to the Rugby World Cup Sevens in Cape Town. He's a 2024 Paris Olympian, and I'm happy to have him here with me. Shout out to Aaron Cummings. How you doing, man?
Good, brother. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. So, just a little bit of background. I know I touched on it with you before, but the reason why I started this podcast is to provide a space for younger athletes to learn from professional and Olympians on how important it is to continuously train the mental side of yourself, right? I think there's a lot of focus on training the physical, but I want to bring attention and awareness to the mental side and getting the opportunity to learn from y'all firsthand. I think, I want this podcast to serve as guidance, inspiration, tools, tips for them to be able to come back and just learn from each episode. So I'm excited. I think they'll learn a lot from you and your journey, and I'm excited to jump into it.
Yes, sir. Can't wait, man. I think the mental side is so important, man, because they don't talk enough about it, and they don't talk about pressure. They don't talk about expectations, reality. So I'm very interested, and I'm happy you're doing what you're doing because this should help generations.
Yo, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Thinking about your journey from high school to college and then the Olympics, can you talk about the mental journey and what skills have been useful along the way?
So a lot's changed for me in the last, I would say, in the last 2 years, 3 years, because it started out as, I started rugby when I was 17. I was a senior in high school. I got a scholarship to play football and rugby in college at Davenport University, and everything was going all right. And then all of a sudden, I drop out of college due to grades and that I wanted to chase rugby full time. So I was probably 19 in that moment. And for the next, what, 6 years, I'm just chasing this ball all around the country. I done lived in Chicago. I done lived in Texas. I done lived in Massachusetts. I done lived in California, Michigan.
Wow.
And I was just grinding my way through it all. And the mental side of it by then was just keep pushing. That's all I could tell myself because when you don't, when you ain't where you want to be, people doubt you. You doubt yourself, and that's probably the biggest obstacle to climb when you're in those stages of getting better and trying to get to where you want to be. Because the self doubt, it ultimately can make or break you. And I just remember all of those days of me telling myself, like, is this really what I want to do? I mean, I'm working at Dollar General as a stock boy 6 days a week. I'm biking 4 miles a day, there and back, and I'm playing rugby, trying to make it to the pros, and I'm going nowhere. I'm good. I'm getting absolutely nowhere. The only thing that's changing is my body because of the work that's being put in, but I wasn't gaining anything. And I just remember every night I just give myself as many positive affirmations as I could. Because I think building your self-confidence is everything in those phases of life where you're trying to get to where you want to get to. So starting out, I'd say in that moment, it was a lot easier when I was coming up through the ranks because I knew where I was going to get to. I really believed in my skills. I believed in my talent. I believed and that hard work never goes unnoticed. I believe in that more than anything. If you're willing to work hard for something, I'm telling you, your chances skyrocket ahead of everybody else because you just want to outwork people. So I'd say high school through college, and as far as like until my mid 20s, it was all about self preservation, all about self confidence. Tell myself every night when I close my eyes, I visualize myself where I want to be, and I go all the way through it. It's not just visualizing the good times of I made the team and I'm doing this play and that play. It's visualizing what you're going to actually do when it goes wrong. It's visualizing hardships that you have to overcome eventually. even if you got to make those scenarios up in your head, it puts you in there. That way, when you get there, it's not a shell shock. And then I would say the last couple years, you know, the pressure of big moments are what define you when you get to the next level. Legacy is everything. And the way that I deal with that stuff is number one, I went to go see somebody. It's actually marked the 1 year last week of me and my therapist seeing each other. Because it's good to talk to people. And my biggest advice as far as you go along in your journey, you can't do it alone. You can't like self-preservation and those self-positive affirmations, they only take you so far. You gotta evolve with it. You can't stay stagnant and thinking that you can only help yourself. You need help. And I'm not telling people to go get a therapist, even though I think it's definitely something to look at. But you need to find somebody you trust and somebody you can confide in that ultimately believes in you just as much as you do. For me, that was my brother and now my therapist, Jamie. And if I didn't have them, I don't know, if I'd really be sitting here right now. Because thinking about Paris, thinking about consistently playing well, because it's not good enough just being on the team. It's not good enough just being out there and having your name, like getting all the clout and stuff like that. You need to want to be a legend. You need to want to be an elite player. It's not just about like all of that name and notoriety stuff is really cool. The media stuff is cool. But at the end of the day, it means nothing if you're not putting no work in and shining out there. So my biggest thing is number one, start out building yourself up. Have no doubt in your skills, excuse me, and make sure you leave no stone unturned when it comes to your work ethic and your mental stability. Because if your mental game ain't there, I don't care what type of talent you got. It'll drive you out. I've seen so many people lose this opportunity just in my world because they weren't there mentally, because they couldn't handle the pressure, they couldn't handle expectations, and then they couldn't live in reality of what their situation was. So to put all of that together, number one, build yourself up, trust yourself, have a lot of self-confidence, not arrogance, but self-confidence and trust that you can perform. And secondly, make sure you got some people you trust around you that believe in you just as much as you believe in yourself. Because every now and again, you're going to need a kick up the you know what. So that's what you really need.
Yeah. You said a lot, and there's a lot of different ways that I can take it. And one of the things that I am fascinated by is you dropping out of college at 19 to pursue this goal, this dream that you had, and how difficult that must have been. Like you said, you touched on, you were working full time, right? You're also having to wake up early, bike to different places. That can take a lot on you mentally. And one of the ways that you said you kind of stayed in it was the affirmations to yourself at nighttime and the visualizations, not just thinking about when things go right, but also how you would respond in different situations. Can you touch on just a little bit more of how you've, discovered these tools and how beneficial they were for you during that time?
So believe it or not, as far as the visualizations go, I've been doing that stuff since I was young because, and maybe this is not maybe, it's a deeper issue than what the surface is gonna be. But I've always wanted to be the best. I've never been, I got some good genes, but I don't have the God-given talent that a lot of people get. I've had to work for everything, even through high school. I was a wide receiver, safety. I was a wrestler. I was a track runner, and I was never good. Like as far as from middle school through my freshman year, even all the way back to Little League football, I was never one of the good kids. And I got so tired of that. I got so flustered. And back then it could have been anxiety about not being one of the best, not being someone that people relied on to get the job done in the sport. So as I was 15 years old, I started doing that at night. I started just closing my eyes and believing that I could do something special. And I have a strong faith with God. And I truly believe that he pushed me through all of that. So having a strong faith and practicing this for a very long time. I'm 27 years old now. I've been doing this visualization stuff for 12 years. And everything that I visualized, everything that I prayed about, it came into fruition. So during the hardest times, I always make sure I close my eyes and I envision everything. So it's never a shock when it happens. And I think more people need to get into that. And you don't necessarily need to have faith, but you put something in motion a lot in your own head, naturally it's just going to start coming to you. You put that good energy out and you put all of that effort into it, just as much as you put into your practicing and your body, weightlifting and your diet. You got to add that in there if you want to be successful. And then the affirmations part, honestly, I was doing a lot of reading back then. I read stuff that that has to do a lot with the mind and your body and like psychological stuff. And it was called The Science of the Mind. And that book just revealed to me how much positive affirmations were helpful to you. It's like when you start fake smiling and then you actually end up being a lot happier. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's not a placebo, it's just proven. So imagine if you could work your mind to work that way. You could say, you know what? I'm getting better. I got better today. You feel better. You're more confident. And imagine if you did that for a year straight. Imagine how far you could progress in that aspect.
Yeah. And affirmations also building on what you said, shift the perspective that you have, right? If you had a practice where, it didn't go the way you want, there's still learnings in that. And so shifting that perspective to think like, okay, what went well from today's practice, even though it didn't go the way I necessarily wanted to go, you can then train your brain to understand in every situation, whether it's good or bad, there is still learning that comes out of it as well.
Absolutely, man. You just hit the nail on the head because that's another thing that people need to learn. And something that I've actually learned as of recently is, you can't get caught up in the mistakes. You cannot get caught up in mistakes. I used to sit down and study my practice film every day, hours at a time, and I would just kick myself over all the mistakes. And like you said, that just changes your perspective of everything. Perception is everything. And the more you kick yourself about it, the less you think about yourself. So I've actually quit that. I've actually just started watching the film for what it is. And you got to understand mistakes happen. But once you get back out on the field or out on the track, whatever you do, once you get back in it, even in just a regular job, you get back into it. Now you got more experience. So those mistakes don't happen again.
Mm-hmm.
And life is all about trial and error, man. That's all this is about. And that comes with any sport, that comes with any job. Anything you do, it's going to be about trial and error and then results, obviously.
Yeah.
So the more you can learn, go ahead.
Oh, no. Go ahead. Finish.
The more you can learn from your mistakes, the better you are. And you need to take that for what it is. I'm not going to let it happen again. And if it does happen again, how am I going to react to the situation?
That's precisely it. My stepmom, she used to tell me, don't harbor over the fact that, in that situation, you didn't do what you wanted to do. You did what you thought was best at that time. Now, reflect on that situation. Don't harbor on it and think about how you're going to handle it the next time that something like that happens, right? So you're not sitting there dwelling on it and beating yourself up, because that then takes you out of the mindset of forward thinking and making sure that when this does happen again, and understanding that I'm going to make sure I handle it differently in the future.
Bingo. Absolutely, man.
Yeah. You also touched on a therapist and a support system, as well as the visualization and the affirmations. How do you mentally prepare for high pressure moments? Because I could imagine that dropping out at 19 to pursue this, there were probably times where you're like, hey, I have to give everything I have because this is my shot. This is my shot, right? Like, how did you navigate those big pressure moments to where you're not putting immense pressure on yourself, so you're not negatively impacting your outcome? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I just think the best way to do it for people who I'd say don't have enough experience in high pressure moments, because throughout all my sports, I think about my wrestling background, and you want to talk about high pressure moments. People think it's more of an individual sport. Like it's the ultimate team sport, the way the scoring breaks down. So I've already had a lot of practice with it, and naturally, I feel like I rise to the occasion very well as far as sports go and calming myself down. I can't. It's hard for me to explain how I do it because it's honestly just like a flow state. Like you don't. The more you think about it, like say, it's the basketball game. 4 seconds left on the clock. You know you about to get the ball to shoot it. You shouldn't be thinking about it. You shouldn't be thinking about I gotta catch this ball. I gotta do this. I gotta do that. It should just be all instinct and all free flowing. Because the more you start thinking about it, the more you're gonna mess it up. I've had moments like that in the game where it's tight in a rugby game, and I'm like, if he passed me this ball, I might drop it. But I ultimately kind of just say, whatever happens in this moment, it is what it is. And I'm telling you, the more you can have that mindset of whatever happens, it happens. And I don't care what the result is, good or bad, I'm going to learn from it either way. Excuse me. Now, the best way to practice that, you got to put yourself in those moments mentally. If you're at training, you need to make sure you're training in those type of moments. And and if you're not getting those moments, you need to talk to a coach. You need to do something to put some pressure on yourself in practice so it's nothing new. It's 3 seconds left. This is what we need to do. And it has to happen right now. And if we don't get it, we lose. And it has to be that straightforward. And the more you can recreate that high pressure adrenaline, the more the more you're gonna put out there. And another way that put myself in these moments is at nighttime in those visualizations.
Mm.
And you'd be surprised. Everybody has that visualization of making the game winning shot or scoring the game winning pass or whatever. But imagine if you put yourself through an entire series of whatever sport you play, and it's tight, and then you imagine yourself losing it, or what possibly could go wrong in that moment. You'd be shocked how high your adrenaline gets before you go to bed, thinking about these moments. And that's something I've always been realistic about, because what people don't talk about either is you can work as hard as possible and do everything right and still not get the results you want. And you gotta be okay with that. You have to, because it'll break those moments, say clutch time moments, and it didn't go your way. It'll break you as an athlete. It'll make you feel like you can't survive the moment. And that's how people get on them slumps and it just never goes right until a moment where they say, screw it, I'm going for it. And then they get it, and then they're like, oh my God, I could have did this. I don't know how long ago.
Yeah.
So the more you can recreate those pressured situations, the more you can, seize the moment.
I love that, because when you were talking about being in that flow state, I started thinking back to the way your teammates described you as like one of the hardest workers. And you hit the nail on the head when you said it starts in practice. It starts with making sure that you're putting yourself in those positions at practice. So when you step into those places where it's a high pressure moment, whether it's a game, it's a meet, it's something, you're not like frantic and this is all new information and new inputs, right? I've been here before and I'm accustomed to this. And I actually haven't heard somebody describe visualizing in that way as well, too. Visualizing these high pressure moments, seeing yourself in there. How is the crowd going to be? How is that moment going to be? So I really like that answer that you touched on. And I want to piggyback on what you started talking about at the end of slumps, right? Where can you describe a time where you were in a slump and how you picked yourself out of that?
Oh yeah, man. I can. This past season, for an example, I probably took a massive bump in my play as far as on the international level, and I started playing a hell of a lot more consistent as far as making the right play, doing the right thing, and kind of being a shining light for us. But I do remember in Vancouver, Canada, for some reason, I just couldn't stick my tackles. And it was not just, usually we play 5 or 6 games in a weekend. And it wasn't just the first game. It was the first game. It was the second game. And it was the third game. And then I'm like, what the heck is going on? This is my job. This is what I'm relied on to do. And it just felt like Like I just couldn't do nothing right. And so we get to our quarterfinal game, and the first thing I said is, it's a mindset. This
Yep.
has to be my mindset. And I said, I got to change it. So Canada's the only place where we play turf.
Mm-hmm.
And I just started doing fireman rolls all over the turf. I started sliding on the turf, trying to rough myself up a little bit, just trying to get myself in that war ready mentality. And I went out there and I just started sticking people. I started sticking people. Semifinal, started sticking people. And I just realized that every time I get into one of those slumps, like if it's the difference between I guess the luxurious part of our game is you have one bad game, you get to play another one in probably a couple hours because we'll usually play 3 games in a day or 2 games a day. And so I get that luxury of watching the tape real quick and
Mm-hmm.
realizing where I need to get better at. So in those times of a slump, you have to just tell yourself, I can do this. I'm better than this. I know I am. And I know it sounds so simple, but it's so powerful to just tell yourself it's my mindset. If I tell myself, if I put myself on the totem pole and just be like, listen, you didn't do what you wanted to do, now you got to do it. And then you'd be surprised how many extras you start getting in at practice. You'd be surprised how different your visualizations. Oh shoot, sorry,
No, you're
getting
good.
my phone back.
Nothing even changed.
You'd be surprised you'd be surprised how many things you'll think about going forward. You'll think about those let's say missed tackles, and now you start visualizing, I'm sticking every single tackle. And the difference, I'd say, when you get into those slumps, is you're not doing everything 100% in those games and in practice. You're not putting your full effort into whatever it was. So you just got to go that much harder. You got to think about the times when you first started or the season had just begun and the energy was hyping. You're giving everything on every single play. But you gotta dial yourself back into that because at that point where I got into my slump, we're halfway through the season. My body's hurting. I'm tired. I'm playing a contact sport on turf with
Mm-hmm.
no equipment. So like, I don't want to get scratched up. I don't want to, I don't want to get hurt. I don't want turf burns or just being really, just not giving my 100%. So I think when those slumps happen, you're just not doing everything to 100%. You're not giving everything you got like you once were. So that would be my message to it all.
Yeah, one of the things that I noticed throughout this whole interview is you're very honest with yourself and you have very real conversations with yourself. Not a lot of athletes can look in the mirror and be honest with themselves. How did you develop that muscle?
I think I started way long ago. I think it started in high school, but I had some uncles who were very real about me and some coaches that were also very real about me. So like in the beginning, just like every other kid, once you start getting a little bit of success and you start making a few plays, you start feeling yourself. And I had a lot of people keep it real with me, like, dude, you're not fast. You're not the fastest guy out there. You're not the biggest, strongest guy out there. So you need to be doing X, Y, and Z to separate yourself. And being real and having those conversations and having to humble myself is what has enabled me to be honest with myself. And sometimes it's good and bad because sometimes I could go a little deeper into what I'm not doing and what I should be doing and kind of take it a little bit harder than normal. But at the same time, it just makes you better for it. So
Yeah.
I think being humble is the biggest key to being able to be real with yourself because you're constantly blaming other people, which is something that's one of my biggest pet peeves in young athletes today is it's never your fault. It's always the coach. It's always circumstance. And don't get me wrong, man. There's politics in every sport. So I definitely understand that being not an excuse, but that being, I guess, an option of why you're not performing so well. But at the end of the day, man, the odds are always going to be stacked against you. And it's up to you to make it happen. So for me, especially coming into this team and being somebody who I've never played high level sevens when I got here. I had to fight, scratch, and claw and be honest with myself. Everywhere I've played rugby, I've been one of the best players.
Mm.
Always. But when I got to this team, right away I was one of the worst. Right back at square one. Easily. Bottom of the depth chart, bottom of the barrel. And I had to figure out what role I wanted. I'm not the fastest guy no more. So I'm not gonna be scoring a bunch of tries. I'm not the biggest guy out here. So I'm not gonna be running people over and making it look easy. I need to find where I fit in at, where I can be of use and what my role needs to be in it. And I changed everything as far as what I wanted to do on the field. So I could be of use and I could be somebody that's counted on. And so you gotta be real with yourself. And you gotta be real about your situation. Whatever situation you're in, again, it's ultimately up to you.
Mm-hmm.
Don't give a coach a reason to pull the politics on you. Don't give a teammate a reason not to trust you or to badmouth you to a coach or to try to snitch you out because you're not doing everything you're supposed to be doing. That's just the bottom line of it. You can't be real with yourself, man. You're not gonna get anywhere. And that ain't even talking about sport. That's just on a life level. You're not going nowhere when it's everybody else's fault and not your own.
Yeah, that's a fact. That's a fact, and I think that's a message that younger athletes will love to hear because I feel like in this day and age with social media, I've said this before, but there's just a glorification of the finished product, and there's not enough focus on what is happening behind closed doors, the hard work that's being put in, and so being able to take that step back and say, okay, am I where I want to be? Why or why not? Let's take full accountability for everything that's happening right now. Could be a huge game changer in, making sure that you're not just focused on the outcome and blaming other people when you're not seeing those results.
Yeah, man. My favorite saying is it's a crowd when it's time to party. When it's time to put that work in, it get lonely. And I can't tell you how many people have come to this team and just been happy to be there. That's what it all comes down to. Happy to be there, want to be on TV, and want to score some tries on TV. Dude, that's like, you're not making it. You're just not. You're just not. That's all I can say is be humble, be ready to work at anything you do because there's going to be people better than you
Mm-hmm.
everywhere you go. There's always somebody. My granny used to say it all the time. There's always somebody bigger and badder than you.
Mm-hmm.
And so how can you beat them?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How do you deal with the mental demands of your sport and other areas of your life?
So believe it or not, I started hobbies, man. I think keeping yourself busy and having a routine is definitely vital for your survival. My first year here, I didn't really do much because I was always worried about keeping my job. Your job here is you want to make tour and you want to be out there playing, and that's the whole thing. There's a selection process for that because obviously we take 12 or 13, we take 13 guys. There's more than 13 guys on this team. So I was never getting away from my sport. I was always submerged in it. And instead of me thinking like, not many people come in their first year and just start making every single tour and playing every single game. That's just not how it works. You got to develop. You got to understand, the system. You got to understand, you got to get your body in shape. It's a demanding sport. I wasn't thinking about any of that. I was thinking about, oh my God, I'm not getting it. I'm not performing well. I'm not this and that. So I'm picking apart film. I'm freaking going to the coach's office. I'm watching film with them. I'm talking every day. I'm asking questions all day and night. And all it did was just make me spiral in the end of it. Excuse me. So to deal with all of that pressure is I find stuff to do. Take care of my body now. I have a routine where I go to the training center, I get massages, start getting in the sauna, taking ice baths, bike flush, going outside, getting some sunlight, whether that's an hour on the weekend or, going somewhere new over the weekend that I've never been just to go see something, go get a new food spot, et cetera, et cetera. You got to have different hobbies. I'm a gamer. I like playing my video games, but I have to get outside as well because just having that natural sunlight just for even 20 minutes a day is special. It helps. So you got to find different things that you like to do and to get your mind, because you can't just always think about your sport. because then you start picking stuff apart and it's just never any good. So, me and my lady, we are every Friday just about we go to a new coffee spot and we don't talk about work. That's the last thing we're gonna talk about. We go get dinner on the weekends and stuff like that. Having a partner who's supportive of you is definitely helpful, man, because you can confide in them and they can get your mind off of your game, off of your sport. And so that would probably be my biggest thing is get into a good routine, figure out what you like to do, and make time and make a lot of time for it. And also, don't forget to call your loved ones. My people have been, my granny has been everything to me. My brother has been everything to me. And so I talk to my brother almost every day. And you never know, man. Sometimes in conversations can be 5, 10 minutes, and sometimes it's 2 hours. So, but that during those times, like you feel the love, you feel at peace, you feel grounded. You're not still thinking about your sport. You're not still thinking about whatever anxiety you got of a moment coming up. It's just all cool. So I make that a habit as well, is to call my folks, talk to my folks, whether I'm driving somewhere or I just finished working out, or even if I'm feeling a little anxious about, say, a tour coming up or practice tomorrow because it's a big practice, it's an important practice. So calling your loved ones in a routine, man, it'll take you hella far because it has done wonders for me.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Having an on and off switch, so you're not always on, even when you're outside of practice, and your community can serve as that off switch to make sure that during those off times, you're getting that rest, that relaxation, and bringing that body back down to just like a peaceful space. Because we know, like when you're training, it's hard, it's high intensity, it's high pressure, but you can't exist in that space forever, right? You're going to get burnt out. You're, like you said, you're going to spiral. So making sure that you have some way to ground you again.
Yeah, brother. Absolutely. It's I honestly can't begin to tell you how important that routine and that off switch is. And you summarized it great.
Yeah.
That off switch, you have to have it.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my one of my athletes, that's one of the things that he struggles with is having that off switch and being able to relax outside of practice. So, I'm happy that we touched on this. And if you can go back and give advice to your high school self, what would you say? Or your younger self?
I would tell them, dude, stay on the path you stand on, but make sure you get some help because there were times where I definitely needed people to talk to, and there were times where I didn't need to do everything by myself. You know, wisdom is everything as far as living and learning. And only, people who don't listen to guidance are fools. People who don't take the wisdom that they're given from somebody who's been in a situation or just, your folks, you're being foolish. And I've been lucky enough to have examples in my life that I didn't want to be like. And I had plenty of examples of people who I did want to model myself after as far as character goes and morale and, you know, discipline. I found those people that I loved the way they carried themselves. So I wanted to do the things that they did. So everything I would tell them is just listen. Don't be so fast to speak, man. Don't be so fast to think you know everything because you don't. And that was my problem for a long time was thinking I knew everything,
Mm-hmm.
thinking I understood how things work. And that wasn't the case at all. And luckily along my path, I met people who got me in line as far as, no, this is not how this works. This is how it works. This is what you need to be doing. You don't need to be, boasting and telling yourself how much you're going to make it and how good you are. You need to figure out what are these successful people doing that I'm not doing.
Yeah.
And so I would just tell my younger self, just listen, bro. Listen to the words, heed the words, man, of the wise, and don't follow your own foolish path. Because if anything, I did it hard. I did it the hard way. People told me for the longest of times to play sevens when I was young and to get into these other clubs, but I was like, no, I'm gonna do it my way. I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna do it this way. I'm gonna get it out the mud. I'm gonna blah blah blah. Like, bro, if you can get some help and find your way
Shortcut.
easier, yeah, do it. Take it. Like, don't be a fool and think you know everything.
Yeah.
And that's just something I've learned that we as young people, it's just it's human nature. Like my brother is 19 years old right now. And he's doing fine. He's got his own place and his own car, good, decent job, but he could have been doing this a lot easier as far as getting to where he wants to get to. Right now, he's having to grind for it, which is that's okay as well, trial and error. But I'm the wisdom person for him. I understand the road that he can take, and he wants to do it his way. And so for me, when people do that, you gotta let them learn. If they gotta learn the hard way, they gotta learn the hard way. And then they come back to you and say, "I should have listened to you." And be like, it's all good because I know exactly what you was thinking. I've been there. So that's all, man. Just listen. You're a young athlete, and you listening. Listen to the people that's trying to help you. And I'm not saying they're gonna always be right. You'll be able to tell that. But on a surface level, just listen to what they got to say and put it in your mind and think about it.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I started this podcast and interviewing people that have been in their shoes so that they can sit there and learn from the wisdom of the people who've come before them and then put that into practice. And
Yeah,
so
man.
my next question, my last question is, how do you handle external pressure and internal pressure?
Whew. I say, as far as handling the external pressure, fans and coaches and, my family name and all that stuff, I kind of just don't, I try not to pay no mind to it because at the end of the day, and I honestly hate this saying, but it's so true. Like, you can only control what you can control, man. All you can control is you. You can't control the external factors, the unseen. You can't prepare for that type of stuff. You can try, but it's not going to do you any good trying to plan for every single little moment. So for me, I kind of just put it to the side, like especially like with fans and coaches, everything is all about results.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as we win, it
Yeah.
don't really matter. It's like they only see you when you're losing, and young kids need to understand that they're not gonna have nothing to say about you when you're winning. They're gonna start talking when you're losing, and that's something we're dealing with right now. And I hate it because I hate looking at social media and seeing all these people who think they know what they're talking about start talking. And I want to say something, but I use it as motivation. I
Mm-hmm.
use external pressure and stuff like that. I use it as motivation, and I don't get too much into it because again, you can only control yourself and what you do. So that is I leave that how it is. As far as the internal pressure goes, especially, excuse me, because I'm all about legacy and how you want to be remembered when you put the cleats away or put the shoes down, the gloves, whatever you do. Again, it goes back to that visualization and that self confidence because I feel that's the only way I can deal with it. And as far as like anxiety or depression goes, that's where your routines come in. That's where your hobbies come in to get your mind off it. And that'll take you far. Because you won't be thinking about when you're doing something you have fun doing, man. Like like me and my girl go bowling all the time. To the point now where we're about to get our own bowling balls and customize all that stuff. That is some of the most fun I have. And I'm not thinking about nothing else. There is no anxiety, depression. There's nothing. When I get on my game with my homies from back home, I'm not thinking about nothing. And I'm laughing. I'm having a good time. I keep myself occupied so I don't have to think about the eternal pressure. And the eternal pressure hits the most probably when you're about to go to sleep
Mm-hmm.
because there's nothing keeping you occupied. And that's where the visualization starts. That's when you start visualizing all your say problems that you see on the horizon and how you're gonna overcome them. And that's how I deal with external and internal visualization, hobbies, and then not paying no mind to what I can't control.
Yeah. Yeah. In previous interviews, because you touched on fun, and in previous interviews, some of the athletes have spoke on making sure that they're keeping their sport fun. And I just wanted to throw that to you and see if that resonates or if that holds true to you, if that doesn't hold true to you, just to get your perspective on making sure that you're enjoying your sport, or just how do you continue to go out there each and every day? I know you touched on legacy, but would love to just hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, the fun is what keeps you going, man. There's nothing like it. Obviously, you talk to a lot of athletes, they hate practice. Practice is one of the worst parts, and I was like that for a while. But especially now that we're starting something new here, we're trying to get back to the fun because only having fun in games is only going to take you so far. You have to really love what you're doing and really enjoy every moment of it, even when it gets hard. So I think fun is crucial because once you're not having fun, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You're just dragging your feet. And that's something I'm working on as of right now for myself is trying to have more fun while I'm there. Everything doesn't have to be business. Like there's a time and a place. When it's time to get serious, then we'll get serious. But everything outside of that, it has to be fun. And not to say that we didn't have fun in the previous years, because we definitely did. But it was always it was always a little too tense.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was always a little uptight and angry. And I'll tell you what, we did a lot of winning, but we did a lot of losing this past year too. So losing definitely is a factor in your fun. Because if you're losing big moments often, it's just human nature, man, that you're gonna be a little bit down. And that's when you need to come back to your whys and why you play the game and why you love it so much. That'll keep you going all the way through. I know I did it. And I just realized, dude, I love this sport. I love it. I don't care how many quarterfinals we lose or semifinals. I love this sport. That's why I do it. So the other athletes and yourself, you hit the nail on the head because the fun part is, you can think about some days and you just like, man, I had a lot of fun today.
Yeah.
And coincidentally, the days you're having fun with it are the days where you're playing your best.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not thinking about external pressure. You're not thinking about internal pressure because you have fun, happy memories.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's everything as
Yeah.
far as having fun. The more and more I'm thinking about it now, it is everything, having fun. So don't forget that at the end of the day, especially if you're doing it for a living, dude, you're living the dream.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing you can't overcome, dude. You're living the dream.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, man. Thank you. So to round this out, I do this thing called rapid fire questions. And so you got 30 seconds to answer 5 questions. I'm gonna get my little stopwatch and I'll ask the first question, or I'll start the time after I ask the first question.
Okay.
You ready?
Yep.
All right, let's get it. What's your go-to pregame hype song?
Anything Detroit.
What's your favorite cheat meal?
Cookies, donuts, chips.
What's your favorite off-day hobby?
Ooh, playing the game.
If you could relive one moment from your career, what would that be?
My first international tour.
What is the best advice you've been given?
So much. Control what you can control.
I like it. You might be the first one that did it in 30 seconds. Yo, I appreciate you, man. Thank you. Before we head out, I just want to ask, is there anything that you want to say that you feel like you didn't have the chance to say during this past 45 minutes?
Not really, man, other than just believe in yourself and give everything you got. Leave no stone unturned.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, y'all. Appreciate you, Aaron.
Hey, thanks, Andre. I appreciate you, brother.
All right, take care.
See you, man.